All right, guys, what's going on, everyone? Give me a second here. Someone let me know real quick, as usual, if you can hear me and see my screen okay. Uh, in a little bit here, I'm going to turn the video off because usually my connection's a little better with the video off. But let's see who's in here. Looks like a good turnout today. It's already telling me my connection is unstable, which is very weird because I have great internet, but whenever I'm on Zoom, this happens. But it looks like you guys are hearing me okay. Other question is Neha in here because she had a really good question about um, SFM. And if she's in here after we're done, I'll go over that. It's more of a long-term trading thing. Looks like she's not in here. Oh, there she is. All right, good, good, good. All right, that was a really good question, and I want to talk about that. But first, we have on our agenda to go over trading IPOs. Now, I've gone over this multiple times and various little pieces of different things related to it. I think the last time we talked about IPOs and pop up, we went over like four different strategies to trade around the highs. But so many of the stocks we've been trading are recent IPOs, and I get a lot of questions about them. And then we have different stocks in various cycles. I thought it'd be good to have a little bit of a refresher. I know some of you guys know this inside and out already. That's fine. It's always good to refresh on it. But some of you are new also and haven't gone back through all the videos. So we'll just do a quick kind of refresher on it. And then this is good for everyone, for all of us who know how to trade IPOs. That is, we're going to review a bunch of them. I put about 30 or 40 in a list here that I think are worth talking about and seeing where they are in their IPO pattern. And I'm going to go over the lesson-based thing very quickly. If you want to really dig into it, there are other videos from the past where we go into IBOs. And if you can't find it, just ask me about it. But let's get to it. We know already that this has been a very good market for momentum stocks, and a lot of the momentum stocks that are moving are stocks that have IPO'd within the last, say, 4 or 5 years. If you look at a lot of the momentum leaders, some of the Focus 40 stocks we've been trading that have really made these outsized gains, they are stocks from IPOing in the last 5 years. And I know a lot of you are saying like 5 years ago, 5 years, that's not really an IPO. Yeah, we're not saying when I talk about IPOs, not necessarily the stock that just IPO'd or IPO'd in the last month or two. I'm talking like the first 4 or 5 years. I almost look at it like think of like stages of like child development. You have like baby, toddler, then teenager. I'm looking at it through like the baby, the toddler, and the teenage years. And then once they become adults, the character starts to change. They don't move like they used to move. So think of it in phases like that. And the way we can look at it is an early, middle, and late phase, and it's very easy to identify where those phases are. A lot of the stocks that we've been talking about are late phase, and that's where you get a lot of opportunity. So when a stock IPOs, a lot of time, there's all this excitement, especially if it's a popular name that ends up IPOing. There's all this excitement about it, but the real opportunity comes like a year after or 9 months after, in that period between like a year and 5 years. That's where these stocks really become good momentum stocks for us to swing trade. So we have an early period, a middle period, and a late period, which I call post lockup expiration. The early period for us as swing traders is the part where we're going to trade the least. And I'm going to turn my video off real quick here, guys. There we go. It's the part where we're going to trade the least because we don't usually get very good trends. You might get some good movements, and they're great for day trading or maybe really quick 1 or 2 day swings. But to ride a trend, there's nothing about the stock that's going to usually lead to a good trend. And part of that reason is number one, the stock has not had an earnings yet. So there's no information related to earnings and revenues. And two, it's what's called quiet period. That is the big investment houses, the promoters, the banks. They can't really talk about the stocks. They can't publish their white papers. They can't publish their analyst reports. Like when we see stocks have analyst upgrades and downgrades, and we got caught with one of them on a toll recently and had to get out because of an analyst downgrade on that. But none of that kind of information is allowed during that quiet period. So you always want to know, when does the quiet period end for the stock? You can Google it. You can go to the NASDAQ site. IPO Scoop is a good site, but you have to be a member. There's various sites you can go to get that information. The easiest thing to do is just Google, whatever stock it is, and then type in, quiet period. And then usually the NASDAQ or one of those sites will come up and it'll give you the date on that. So we want to know when the stock IPOs. When does quiet period end? Now, during this period, if you do want to trade this period, I always keep track of stocks that are IPOing, and I day trade a lot of them, or we'll do maybe a very quick one night hold. But that's not our focus there. We're focused on more swing and writing trends and some specific swing setups, and that's not really what this early period is for. So, that first 30 days, you really don't want to do much with them. If you are trading it, first of all, you're not using the dailies. There's not enough daily candles for you to really get any good patterns off. You're going to be using intraday charts. If you're trading in the morning, 1 minute or 5 minute charts. If you're doing like range breaks for some very quick swings, you can use intraday charts like 30 minute, 15 minute, 60 minute type charts. So not really our focus here. But once it gets out of that period, when the stock has had one earnings, so we have some earnings information out. The company has talked and they've told you what their earnings and their revenues are. And then you also get the quiet period ending, where the analysts can start talking about it and publishing papers on them. That's when the trends start to develop, and that middle period is where we can really start trading. So if we kind of draw a timeline here, let me get rid of these ads. There we go. If we draw like a timeline, like, whoops, let me redo that. Okay, if we draw a timeline like this, all right, here's the date it IPO'd. Let's say this is early period, okay? No information. Then let's say right around here, we have an earnings that came in, and then maybe right around here, we have the quiet period ending. That's often where trends will emerge. So in this period, it's just basically almost like gambling, just a bunch of traders trading the stock, day trading, very quick swings. You get some range breaks or some things that are interesting, but it's usually very choppy during this period. Now, once quiet period ends and there's been an earnings, at this point, you might start to get trends. If there's not really much related to earnings, or the analyst reports don't really tell much, maybe it still does nothing. But oftentimes, you'll start to get trends, either downtrends, if it's maybe not the best news, or uptrends. And of course, we are really focused on the ones during this period that are uptrending. And this is where we get to start swing trading the stock. Okay. CRWV has been in this period. And this is kind of outlines what we've been talking about here. So, and it almost looks just like my drawing here as well. So this is where we get to start trading it. And a lot of the setups we like to trade: breakout setups, range breaks, breakout pullbacks to moving averages, gap fills, rubber band setups if it gets a little beaten down. All those kind of things that we trade during this period, they become available, and you can write out some very good quick trends in this period. So trade it like a momentum stock. You get your trend continuation pullbacks. If it gets extended, you can do runner shorts. All those types of momentum type setups that we trade are very good during this period. Sometimes it'll get a little beaten down and maybe you get a rubber band setup or a bottoming formation. Whatever it is you see that are good kind of momentum swings, you can do during this period, with one caveat, and that is you want to know when lockup expiration is. And that is very important for the IPOs. And it looks like we have a few questions in here. I'll get to the questions after I'm done talking about it, and then we'll hit your questions so I don't keep going back and forth. But we have the quiet period. Usually this is somewhere between 1 and 2 months. An earnings is going to come during this period, and then you start getting the reports. Always look up the dates for when quiet period ends. Then we have the lot, up until the lockup expiration, which is generally going to be around 180 to 270 days. So that is usually about 6 to 9 months when lockup expiration. So always know the lockup expiration date as well for your stock. So trade this one during this period, but know when lockup expiration is. And what lockup expiration is, the initial investors in the stock before the stock went public, when it was private, wherever they got in at, imagine the stock has gone up big, right? Say, it opened at 20, it's made a nice move in the first 6 months and it's trading at 80. Even, a lot of initial investors who maybe plan to hold this thing long term, they see that their stock is up, 300%. During lockup expiration, they are not allowed to sell. So you can imagine some of them are sitting here wanting to take that profit, but they cannot. All right. So obviously, then lockup expiration becomes an important date, especially for these stocks that have really moved, because there are going to be people who want to get out and sell. So and that's obviously going to change the supply and demand of that stock, right? So all of a sudden, after lockup expiration, all these people who are sitting on profits, or maybe for whatever reason, maybe even the stock hasn't moved much, but they just want to get out. Their money's been tied for however long. They want to get out of the stock. They can't do it. Now, that's not the people who are trading this stock. So don't get that confused. This is those initial investors who got in before the stock went public. All right, angel investors, that type of thing. They cannot sell. Now, if you buy it after the stock IPOs, you can buy and sell. So don't worry about that. Like if you get in here, do I have to hold till lockup expiration? No, you can buy and sell whenever you want. This is for those initial investors. So so they cannot sell during this period. So what will often happen then is you've had this big run up, and then all of a sudden lockup expiration hits, and you get profit taking, and there'll be a dip in the stock, and sometimes that dip will keep going down, and we've seen this. We've been talking about the IPO cycle and how many stocks have we seen, right, that I've shown you over the last 2 months that we like right now, that were very strong in their initial IPO phase. Then after a year or two, they start getting crushed and bottom out, and then they come back, right? That IPO cycle that we've been talking about and playing a lot. So this is often where it starts, where you get that initial wave of selling from those initial investors, and then the downtrend begins. Not always. So it's not like clockwork. You can just bet on this and just keep shorting these things, but it's something to look out for. And what I like to do, let me see if I have this in my notes here. We can talk about it. Yeah, share structure, float versus outstanding. So for those of you who don't know, obviously we talk a lot about float size, right? That's the amount of shares available for public trading. There is also shares outstanding. That is the entire amount of shares. All right. So what I look at going into lockup expiration, let's say there is a stock with 200 million shares outstanding. Okay. We have 200 million shares outstanding going into lockup expiration, but there is only a 50 million float. What that's telling you is 50 million shares are being traded right now, but there are 200 million shares outstanding, and they're outstanding for various reasons, various types of shares. But and you can actually go in and kind of get a feel for it. But this gives you a general idea right now that there's a lot of insiders, right? Who, when this thing has popped, and when they can sell, there's probably going to be a lot of shares that come on the market that want to sell, right? That gives you a good indication of that. So maybe this scenario here, maybe I want to jump in and take a little gamble and use maybe a protected options type strategy, or even just a small amount of shares and just short here on the bet that this thing is going to go down, right? That's not usually how we trade. We're usually trading the patterns and we want to see confirmation of that type of thing. But this gives us kind of a kind of a hedged bet that there's a good chance this is going to go down. So now, instead of 50 million shares, let's say the float was 190 right now, and there's 200 million shares outstanding. In that case, I wouldn't be, my expectation wouldn't be quite as much, right? That we're going to get a big drop because there's not as many shares that are going to come available. Still could happen, but this would really excite me, right? So always track this when you're watching your IPOs, especially when they don't have lockup expiration. Yeah, see what the stock has been doing in the middle period, and you've probably been trading it with your swing, strategies during this period. But as it gets closer to lockup expiration, watch the character of the stock, and then take a look at what's the float size, what are the shares outstanding, and that can give you a little edge in trading around this period at lockup expiration. All right. Now notice I pulled up CRV right now, CRWV, and the quiet period ended in early May. Let me get the exact date out. I had it written somewhere here. Here I have, this is the NASDAQ site here. NASDAQ site is very good for this kind of information. Notice here, um, lockup expiration was August 14th. Quiet period ended May 7th. Total shares outstanding, 345. Float, it doesn't have a float size, I don't think here. But that gives you a general idea here. So let's just look at what happened here. This will kind of lay out what I just talked about probably, because it usually happens quite often. And notice here, notice in the beginning stages, there was no real trend, just back and forth, choppy action, right? Popped, then dropped. A lot of good day trading because look at the intraday volatility. As a day trader, this is fantastic. But for us as swings looking for trend, nothing here, right? This happens a lot. Look at the initial euphoria. People get excited, then they get caught up here, the stock drops. But then notice here, May 7th, right in here, notice a big trend developed. So we had earnings right here, and then we had quiet period ending right here, and now we got the good trend. That's when the trend really started, right? Once there was some information here. Then you can see it ran, then started to pull back here. Then notice here, what did I say the lockup expiration was? August 14th. Notice there, this got a little weird because it also had earnings just before lockup expiration. So earnings were right here, either the 12th or the 13th. And notice this was the lockup expiration date on the 14th. And look at that big decline on lockup expiration. That's a pretty big percentage move, right? It had closed here at 118. By the end of the day at lockup expiration, it was at 99. So a 19 point, almost a 20% drop in one day during lockup expiration, and it dipped further, right? So that's why you want to pay attention to these types of these dates: the quiet period ending and lockup expiration. Okay, so we have the early period, we have that middle period where we get to like ride our trends, but we want to know where lockup expiration. And if you want to do, try to make maybe a lockup expiration play, be careful, trade small because it's not guaranteed that it's going to work, but you have a good edge for that. And then now, like a year to 5 years, this is where that IPO cycle really comes into play. What often happens, and we've talked about this a lot, you guys have seen this happen over and over, and I'm going to actually redraw this here. That is, okay, let's say this is early period, this is middle period, and now we have, here's lockup expiration. Now this is years, 1 to 5, okay? What often happens is maybe you get something like this, and then maybe even after lockup, maybe it dipped during lockup expiration, but then it went higher again. And then at some point, the big decline will set in, and you get this big downtrend somewhere in here, years 2, 3, 4. I keep IPO lists and start tracking this stuff. And at some point in here, the actual good companies, and what I start to do is when these stocks are declining, there's a lot of junk stocks that IPO, but look for the stocks that are showing revenue growth. That's number one. And then number two, earnings growth. But the biggest thing is revenue growth. If you're seeing, as it's declining, you're seeing strong revenue growth, those are stocks to really target. And then look for the classic bottoming formations. The W pattern, the inverted head and shoulder, the rounded pattern. And as these things are developing, you start to look for accumulation during these periods. Big green candles during the bottom formation. So then we play. Now we've talked this part. We've talked a lot about, right? Then we start to see the bottoming formation. We see the bottom formation breakout, the continuation patterns. And then if it does ever get to wherever that IPO high was, what it made in the early stages here, if it ever gets that IPO high, you guys know we did a recent session where we talked about the the IPO high float, like the float to the IPO high, which we recently did with Coinbase and Roblox. Then the IPO high breakout and the breakout pullback, which we did with Uber and a few other stocks. And then when they break the IPO high, if they can hold this range over the next 6 months to a year, maybe sometimes 2 years, you'll often see like 100 200% gains, and you can either play it as a long-term trade or just continually swing trade the continuation patterns, which we're looking to do with Uber right now. So, and Uber is a good example of this. You can see here, here's the float to the high here, the breakout pullback, and I saw my notes here from when we traded this, and now it just becomes continuation pattern after continuation pattern, and we expect a very big move in the stock. I wouldn't be surprised, this is sitting at 200 in the not so long future. Okay, so that gives you a general idea of IPO strategy. Now, as um, as this whole thing is developing, remember, you in the middle period, you have all your setups, swing setups you trade. Uh, Trade whatever you're seeing during this period here. Then once it bottoms out, those classic patterns we've talked about, we've traded with various stocks. A lot of our stocks that we're watching in our Focus 40 are these kind of young IPO type stocks that are in their first 5 years, and we're trading off this pattern, what I call the IPO cycle, that you just see over and over again. You go back to Facebook, Google, all these stocks, almost all of them did something very similar during their early stages. So that's a good study. If you just take a bunch of stocks that are, the big stocks now, and look at them when they IPO'd in 2005 and 2010, whenever it was, and you'll see a lot of these same patterns playing out. Okay, let's see if there's anything else we really need to talk about here. I think that's good for now. And let's actually look at some of these stocks that we've been watching here. I put them in a list here for us to just kind of analyze and see what's happened. First, let's get to your questions. Rahul is asking. Rahul, I don't do a lot of entries based on acquisition type stuff. Um, yeah, Mike, look up the quiet period. It's usually between 1 and 2 months. And also look up the first earnings date. Uh, Anuradha is asking, how do I know when lockup expiration is? I just mentioned this earlier. One, you can just Google it and the sites will come up. If I Google right now, let's see, what's a stock that's a recent IPO. Does anybody have any? I think a bat is a recent IPO. So let's just look. We can just type in a bat, quiet period, and we'll get the information here. Here's Nasdaq. Nasdaq will usually be the first site that pops up, and it'll have the information here. IPO Scoop is a really good site. Nasdaq's a good site. That Edgar is also a good site. And if any others of you have any good sites that you like to use for IPOs, you can post them in here. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead, and I think that's extent to your questions. Uh, Anuradha, I don't understand your questions about IPO right is only the right for the day for the next few days. No, the IPO high is the IPO high until it breaks. Like, so you can see ABAT here made its IPO on the first day, and that's still the IPO high that we're watching right now. All right, let's go through here and just analyze some of these. And we've talked a lot about Rocket Lab, and you can see here, you're going to see what basically this ugly little drawing that I did. You're going to see variations of it over and over again. So here's where it IPO'd. Here's where it made its IPO high. Notice here the big downtrend here. So it IPO'd in 2020, starts downtrending 2021. You see the base here, the bottom here. Notice here on this side, now we start to see good volume coming in. We get the bottom formation breakout. We get the trend here. We get the IPO high breakout and then the IPO pullback play. And now it's just getting continuation phase at highs. This high doesn't really matter anymore outside of maybe trying to measure where you are in the next trend. Here's Figs, a younger stock. And notice here, again, IPO high very early. And again, starts downtrending, right? Again, we see this over and over again. No, and Fig, I think was one of the more popular um, IPOs this year, or not this year, when it IPO'd. And notice here, bottoming here. Now, is it a bottom now? No, we don't have any indications of that, right? We see it potentially bottoming. We don't see strong accumulation at this point, maybe a little bit, and money flow is improving, but nothing where I'm going, I got to jump in now. This is about a strong bottom formation, but I'll be watching it. Maybe it happens this year, maybe it happens next year, but it is on my IPO list. XPEV, the Chinese electric auto company, here's where it IPO'd. This does look like a W bottom here. And now we're breaking out of the bottom formation. And we're looking for continuation patterns now. And potentially, if it ever does get up here around 66, and you'll be surprised sometimes when they get in continuation phase, how fast they get to this level. And if you guys have any IPOs you want me to take a look at, either recent IPOs or IPOs over the last, again, three to 5 years, you can post them in here. But you'll be surprised how quickly they can get up to the IPO high once they start trending. But if it gets up between 5 and 10% away from the IPO high, we could do the IPO float here as well. And you guys know recently Coinbase. And here again, here's the cycle. IPO high on the first day. And then you can see here, here's the classic bottom formation, the good volume coming in, trending, and now playing the IPO high. Roblox is another one that we are in right now, kind of in that phase as well. There's been a lot of talk in our chat about DraftKings, and you can see here's where the IPO high was. And slowly here was the bottom formation after the big downtrend, and now slowly making its way back up to the IPO high. And I'm not going to go over all 34 of these. What I'm going to do is, so you guys have a little list to work with, I'm going to send you guys these stocks in the chat here. Okay, you guys will have this. You guys will have this list here. I have a much bigger list of like 300 or 400 stocks, but this is a good starting point for you guys. But let me touch on a few of these that I think are interesting. Rivian, I think is interesting right now. Here's another one. Look at how many of these like IPO high in the first few days when people are really excited about them, then they get crushed. Notice the all the good volume here. This is definitely one to be watching for a bottom formation breakout. QS, this is auto parts. Again, IPO high here. This one looks like it's bottoming as well. Look at all that good volume coming in. Hood, here's the IPO cycle. Here was the IPO high. Here was the bottom, continuation patterns, IPO high breakout, and now riding the trend. Circle's a newer one. It definitely has already had quiet period will have been over by now, but let's actually look up lockup expiration for this one. Two lockup periods expire on August, September with an early restricted stock trades. So this one has some, this one's a little more complicated than some of them, but let's. Lockup expiration 180 days. Quiet period ended in July. Lockup expiration 12/2. So we have time. So we basically have till December before lockup expiration, but I would definitely be watching this one. Shares outstanding, 202 million. And the current float size is 184. So not a huge difference between outstanding and float size right now. SoFi, obviously we're in this one right now. You can see where it IPO'd here. And again, you're probably noticing almost all of these at some point get crushed and put in these bottom formations. All right. So that's a little hopefully that helps you guys with understanding IPOs a little more and how to trade them. Um, let's actually talk about SFM now if Neha's still in here. Um, okay, so Neha was asking about trading this stock as a potential longer term play. And I don't know if that you meant like longer term as an investment for, a long term, or you just meant like a position trade for 6 months, 9 months, a year, something like that. But the things I like to look at, position trade. All right. So as a position trade, I'd be looking for something that leads me to believe it can trend here. And for now, I do see, I think what you're seeing here, which is the rubber band setup, right? So there's definitely a trade to potentially be had here, which would be either be a remount of the 9 EMA or a that off the hammer yesterday, obviously, and you could trade that as a rubber band setup. I don't see anything that tells me that this would be that this is going to get right back on trend. So as a longer term position trade, maybe not right now. I do like the fact that it has strong revenue growth. It's had strong earnings overall. It's a stock that I'd identified as a trend play all throughout here. You guys know we talked about it. It was on our Focus 40. So I do like it as a trade. As a position trade, I'd probably want it more indication that it could be uh, starting a new trend. This could be a rubber band setup that sets another leg down. And what concerns me here is this is kind of in no man's land right here, right? And if we look at the weekly as well, again, kind of in no man's land, like in between the 50 and the 200-day moving average. Like if this was bouncing down to the 200, then I might say, okay, this is a major, the 200-day moving average like it did here. And then it could be starting a new trend. But here it may bounce and then may hit the 200-day moving average. And here, if it shows strength, I would say, okay, this is a good spot for a longer term. Now, if you love this thing and you're willing to enter here and use a super loose stop, like 30 points, then I think it would be okay. Otherwise, my opinion or the way I would do it is trade this as a swing and then look for some other signs to potentially make it a position trade if you like it. You like all the numbers, you like the company as a kind of a trend play. All right, guys, good session as always. I will have the recording of this in about an hour, and I will see you guys with another pop-up session next week. And of course, in the chat, and all you guys stay active in the chat. All right, talk soon, guys.